Okay, I think it started. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We're gonna wait just one more minute to allow a few more people to join, and then we will get started. Okay, I propose we get started with this. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Maria Paola Conte. I'm a program manager within EIT Manufacturing South, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. This webinar has been organized within the framework of activities that we are offering for the SMEs within the Mantra project and in collaboration with the project Artrimidas. So we will give you a very short introduction to what the Mantra project is and to what Artrimidas is, and then we will get started with the session of today. Parnia, if I could ask you to go to the next slide because I see I can't click just now.
I think you can, but okay.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So Mantra is a Horizon Europe funded project which is supporting the green, digital and social transformation of European manufacturing SMEs. We are doing this by supporting SMEs with two open calls. One of them has already initiated and the SMEs are working on the project and they are within today's guests in this webinar. And the second open call just opened on the 15th of June. We are supporting 6 sectors within the first open call, so food, ceramics, plastics, textiles, metal, and machinery. For the second open call, machinery will not be supported anymore. Each SMEs that will be selected in the second cohort will get up to 50,000 euro of funding, together with additional advisory services delivered by the Mantra Consortium and a matchmaking mechanism which will allow the SMEs to be paired with technological providers. In addition to this, participants to the Mantra project will be part of a EU-wide ecosystem, which is the Mantra community, with plenty of opportunities for matchmaking, networking, and knowledge exchange. You can see here the consortium of the Mantra project comprises Zabala as coordinator and 7 more partners. If you want any further information about the project, we have embedded in the slides the link to the website, as well as a couple of email addresses where you can reach out to us to ask for more information. I will briefly hand it over to my colleague Antonella to give a couple of words about the other project that helped us organize in this webinar, which is Artrimidas.
Thank you, Maria Paola. Good afternoon, everyone. As already mentioned, this session is organized in collaboration with the Horizon Europe funded project Artrimidas, which aims to develop a multi-actor framework for the remanufacturing of energy goods at the industrial level. These activities are being implemented through innovative digital technologies, including machine learning, marketplace, digital product passport, and graph model for defects, as well as advanced mechatronics, including laser cladding, additive manufacturing, and the automatic assembly and disassembly. Lastly, the project involves also the integration of social sciences and humanities through legal frameworks, a focus on ethics, as well as social models. There are three main use cases focusing on the industry of energy goods. And should you wish to find out more about this project, here you may find the QR codes to follow us on LinkedIn or on the web page. And you can see here the consortium, and this project is coordinated by Netcompany Intrasoft. We now hand over back to you, Maria Paola.
Thank you, Antonella. So for today's sessions, we have two speakers. The first speaker is Parnia Shafinejad from EIT Manufacturing South, which will talk about circular business models and circular value proposition. After her session, we will have a short Q&A session. Feel free to ask questions, but if you don't manage to ask the question at that point, don't worry, we will have a more extensive QA session at the very end of the webinar. The second speaker of today is Abderrahman Abdallah. We can call him Moni for simplicity, from Politecnico di Milano, who will talk about digital product passport and sectoral use cases. So I would like to thank in advance our speakers, and for the people in the audience, I hope you enjoy this session. So with no further ado, I hand it over to Parnia.
Okay, thank you so much, Mary. So hello, everyone from my side. Do you enjoy this workshop today? So just about myself, my name is Parnia Shafinejad, as Mary introduced me, but I am a program manager at EIT Manufacturing South. So my background expertise is I have more than 7 years of experience in the field, and also working on the European funded project. So about the agenda of today. So today I would like to introduce some topics about the circular economy business models. So the main one is that to understand what is a circular economy and circular business models in principles, and then how the implementation actually requires from the perspective of the small medium enterprises especially, and what are the gaps. There are 3 gaps actually to be discussed, and then some enabling tools like methodologies, supporting tools, and let's say to implement to address these gaps. And then at the end, a thinking framework just for you to land with all what we have said in this workshop. So Okay, so I will start with the first section, which is about the circular economy. Let me to introduce what is the statement of the circular economy is. So the circular economy business model is not just about doing less harm, but it is about capturing the more value where it is thrown away through a linear economy. So what is the linear economy is that the case of the most of the manufacturer at the moment, which they take the raw materials, they make it and use it, and when they use it and they just send it to their customer, this will be at the end of a lot, they will be waste. So it means that the value in the linear economy will be extracted only one. So the products are only designed to be for a shorter life cycle. So they create more, generating more waste on the end of life. However, for the circular one, the question will arise: so how this process can retain this lost value, which is, they call it waste in the linear economy. So the idea is that to the end of one product's life in a circular way, it is the beginning of another one, which means that the material components, they will remain longer in the system and they will not be thrown away. So the value will be captured, and it will be through reducing the cost. And it means that when you capture the value of a product, it can be retained in your circle, in your production cycle. So reducing your cost, and also you can be less dependent into the raw materials. But however, and the reason this conversation is urgent right now is for that for pressure that is already coming for the linear manufacturer. There are a lot of pressure, but these are the most let's say validated one and cited one that they are facing at the moment at European scale. So I do not want to dive into them in detail, but just give you a very short explanation. I think most more or less most of you knew about this pressure on this scale. So about the raw materials price fragilities and volatility, with considering also the geopolitical issues, the raw materials, the Europe and mainly our small countries, they are dependent on the raw materials that are arriving from the non-European countries. So the price is also volatile, and it depends on these distances that are arriving. And then the EU regulation, which is tightening every year, and there are new compliances and regulation that are enforcing European manufacturer to apply this, let's say they call it circular one. And then the demand of the customer at the procurement level. So you sometimes might be possible that you have faced that some customers require the provider that have the more sustainability through their reporting of the corporate social responsibility directive. So these are the things that are sometimes, if some manufacturer, they do it by themselves, they are going to be forced by their external procurement supply in the supply chain. And then the last one is about the rising cost of the waste disposal and the environmental compliance, which is also very hitting ground, let's say this at this moment. But now, before go to business model types, I want to spend a moment on the butterfly diagram. So because it gives us the conceptual framework for everything that follows. So the diagram is developed by Ellen MacArthur Foundation that shows the two cycles of the circular economy. On the left side, you can see the biological cycle that is for organic materials that can return to the natural system through composing or through anaerobic digestion. But on the other hand, on the left side, it's the technical cycle of the butterfly, and it's for manufactured goods like plastics, wood, metals, and other components. So this is actually the side that matters for most of the manufacturer companies like you. So, but the key inside of this diagram is that the hierarchy of loops. So there are loops, as you can see, from the inner side to the outermost side. So, but the ones that has the, let's say, shorter circle and it's closer to the inner cycle has captured the most value of a product. So for instance, through sharing, maintenance, repairing, reusing, and refurbishing, they are capturing the more value for a product rather than recycling. However, recently recycling is being considered as a circular economy, which is true, but in order to tackle the most added value of the circular economy, we have to concentrate also on the more inner cycle of this circular economy loop. So, okay, so let me just walk through the 6 main archetypes of the business models that we call it archetypes of this circular economy. These are coming both from the academic and practitioner literature, and primarily from I just already sourced the resource. It is mainly from Accenture, that they have already published a good framework and documents about these type of archetypes, and also from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, as I already mentioned, on other scientific sources. There are kind of different type of, let's say, calling this archetype, but these 6 are the most cited one that I would like to just shortly describe what are them. So the first one, I will start with the circular inputs, the circular supplies, which means that a company or a manufacturer, they will substitute the using the raw materials and virgin materials with recycled materials, renewable and bio-based materials, which means that you close the loop before starting your manufacturing and before the manufacturing will start actually. The next one is the product life extension. I would call it one of the prominent one, which is I think very familiar familiar for most of you. So it means that the product that you're producing will remain in use for a longer period. So it's not true. So you can extend this life of the product through repairing, maintaining, and providing the warranties, and to extend this life of the product. So it means that the product is not only be sold to customer and just finish, but you will provide a product that it's remain longer in a usage phase for the customer by providing additional services to them. The next one, sorry, is the product as a service. So it means that you are not selling any more a product, you will sell a performance or a service to a customer. So by this means that you are remain the owner of the product, but you will also only provide the physical part of this product to your customers. And this is somehow will allow you to manage, first of all, your product, and of course you provide additional and added value services to your customers through that product. Then it is the sharing models or platform models, which means that you create or participate in an infrastructure that enables multiple users to share or access to a product or asset, which means that there are some components or liabilities or industrial infrastructure that you will use only time to time. So you can share this equipment with a larger amount of user, like the manufacturer or other that are needed. So in order to reduce your burden cost of the capital and also gain sometimes revenue. And then the resource recovery. This is about the take back the product. So this will be through different, let's say, circular loops. One of them is remanufacturing, which means that you take back the product and which are arriving at their first end of life, and you restore to the original specification by repairing or maintaining or changing some original equipment, and then resell them with equivalent warranty and of course with lower price. This is called remanufacturing usually, and also refurbishment sometimes. And the recycling is that, okay, you just retrieve the value of the product through breaking down to its valuable components. So this is not the ultimate one, but this is something that will help you to at least reserve the value of the materials. Then industrial symbiosis, which is it's the exchange of some valuable, let's say, waste, they call it, among a shared community. So it means that one company waste can be a valuable input for another one. So in this case, the ones that the putting away its waste, so it will not pay the penalty of landfilling, and the other one that requires that waste as an input, they can pay as a lowest price. So this is the win-win situation that it is kind of possible. You can see it also in different kind of geographical location at Europe. Sorry. Then the last one is the design for circularity, which is, I think, one of the important one, because it is kind of the base for all of these archetypes, because it starts from the engineering of the product. So you engineer the products that are suitable for to be disassembled, remanufactured, or reused. So these are they call it design for X, let's say, in terminology, and it helps you to provide durable and repairable and disassemble product in order to upgrade them, and or of course to also to extend their product lifetime. So these are all happen in one archetype. Then, so let me just show you what combining these archetypes look like in practice. So Renault established what they call it the refactory in France. So this is one of the Europe's first dedicated circular economy factory for vehicles and mobility. And what is interesting about this is the case how many archetypes are combined in this simultaneously. So the lesson here is like so just briefly to explain you. At the moment, so Renault just combined these kind of four archetypes, which is recovery and resource recovery and manufacturing for engines, gearboxes, and some of the electronics equipment, and product life extension through let's say kind of they call it retrofit, which is they can use the vehicles for a longer period and extending the vehicle component life cycle through the maintenance and so on. The circular input, so they recover the materials that are integrated into their production system, and they are by this reducing their dependency on the virgin materials. So this will happen also through a systematic take-back system through their dealers and reverse logistics that they have established. And then the final one, which is the design for circularity, which allow them to employ all the other archetypes, as I mentioned before. But the lesson here is not just that you need to build a dedicated circular factory. So of course not. The lesson is here that Renault builds each of these capability one at a time and then scale it up. So for some manufacturing, small medium enterprises, always the issue if they have to start to build based on all of these archetypes. The answer is not. It depends on your needs. But we will see later on, of course. So let's here we move to the second topic, which is actually about how to implement actually these requirements. So I will start with some of the gaps that are very predominant in this sector, and just most companies understand the circular business models, what is it, and but the important is that how the implementation it is the issue. So it means that the concept makes sense, the logic is clear for them, but when they try to move things or slow down or stop the whole process. So and this is also happens because there are some critical and gaps at the operational level, which is one of the fundamental one, because not all of the SMEs they have this infrastructure to implement this reverse logistic. The second one is the data traceability, which they do not have information when they sell the product, what will happen to that. And of course, the most important one is also the commercial and at organizational level, because it is also sometimes hinder them to implement those implementation of the circularity. Okay, so I just want to specify some words for each of these gaps to make them clear. The first one is the operational capability. So, however, so the circular models require infrastructure that most manufacturers simply do not have. I mean, like in the reverse flow, which we will see in this diagram below, the green one. But the forward flow, which is from the raw material extraction, production, manufacturing, distribution, and then the customer use. This is what most the companies have and build it over 2 years. But the reverse flow, that is a take back, the collecting those materials that have been used, components or product, and they're sorting them, inspecting them, reprocessing them, and restoration processes, and then making them, let's say, documenting them in order to be possible to be used and entered into the market. So this is what circular models additionally required in this let's say flow. Beside what you produce, you need to create kind of logic to manage this take back flow. So the reverse logistic here, the infrastructure for that, what does it mean? It means that you need a contract with carriers to collect these product from their customers, and you need to that are depoted or consolidated point. You need a consolidation point for returning of these units, and you need this system to track them, to disassemble them, which is the next one, and the disassembly and inspection capability. So you need a trained and technician who can disassemble the product technically or systematically through a process, and they need to understand the condition of this disassembled product, and you need a decision logic in either to go for restoring or recycling or just to scrap them. So, and then the restoration and let's say quality control, which is that, okay, you need process lines that should be adopted for variable inputs quality, because you might it might be possible that you receive a variety of inputs with variety quality and a state of the health at the end, but you need to quantify them, certify them, and test them whether they can be used or it's not possible to be used. So, and if they are usable, so there should be some logic to document them for to make them prepare for the second market customer. So, therefore, the insight here is not is you cannot close the loop on the business model side until you have built this reverse operational infrastructure. So the business model change also and the operational investment have to happen, both of them together, to just tackle this gap. And the second gap is data traceability, and this is the ones that I want to remember, because we will also through the next session with Moni, we will I think you will discuss it here in detail. But the stage in the top, the blue one, is the again design, manufacture, sale. So this is the part that most of the manufacturing typically have a good idea because they produce and they sell. But once the moment that the product is just leaves your company and factory and they reach into the customer, so this is exactly the time that the data it stops. So you do not know where this product went, how is the condition, how it has been used, or when it's approaching for the end of life. So just let me to make this concrete, because if I ask you right now where the units you have sold, let's say 2 years ago, where are them? So I think and at what condition they are. So I think the answer is not very simple for most of the organization and SMEs at this time. And without that, okay, it is difficult to design a system that to know how this product they will come back and what is the status of them. And this is what exactly circular economy needs to know, because it is important to know where your product is at which location, how it's been used, where is which customer is using, and what is it contains if you receive that product. So what material had been used in this product, at which component level, and then what is the condition of it if you receive that. So these are something that sometimes it's not possible if you are working not just in a way that you cannot trace your product, so you cannot understand what is the performance of that product, and then of course if it can be recycled or not. So if you do not have the specification about that product, the way that is used, so it might be difficult to decide how it can be recycled and it is valuable to be recycled or not. So these are the things that create the difficulties mainly. And the third gap is the commercial and organizational. And in my experience, I think this is one of the hardest one, because it requires a cultural change, not just the operational and process change. So if you look at the comparison table that you can see in this slide from the left one, it is about the 5 dimensions that are the most important one. Let's say, of course, there are different and more consideration, but these are the 5 main one. In the linear organization, so the sales approach is just to sell a product with the highest margin, and that's it. However, for the circular one is that just not sell a product, is just to sell outcome or performance that you can retain it, you can access to it. So in this case, you build a long-term relationship with your customer. Then the revenue model, so it is for the linear one is just about capital sale, but for the circular one is recurring revenue. So you can continue periodically to receive some predictable revenue, even very small amount. The customer relationship, of course, it is for the linear one is just selling one product as transactional. So and when the warranty is also finished, there is no relationship. However, the circular one is the service relationship. So you are providing the services, so it will become obligation, and also you are on the other hand developing a trust. And the engineering goal, which of course every organization also at the moment they want to produce as much as product in the economy of scale with the lowest cost. The production cost should be reduced. However, in the circular organization is to maximizing the durability and repairability of products. So in this case, if a product become let's say if you receive the product by end of more time for repairing them and maintaining them, so it will generating cost for you. So it's force you to develop and produce components and products that have more durability and repairability. So in this case, you can also reduce your cost. And the waste mindset, which is, I think, one of the most important one, of course, because the waste disposal for most of the companies should be minimized, and they do not care about it. So, but in the circular one, the waste is not waste; it is a source of value that they can obtain it. Okay, so by that, I think we can move to the third topic, which is the how to close the gaps in this case, and what enabling tools that are relating to each of those gaps can be possibly allow us to organization to adopt that. So so having named these gaps, so let me to briefly describe these design and business models, which is one of them in this side. So first of all, it is the one tool that can be applied is a Circo methodology, which is a methodology that is developed by two initiatives that are based on Netherlands, and it is a tool, a methodology that allow each organization to analyze what is the state of their organization linearity or circularity, and based on that, they can step by step establish how they can move toward being circular by adopting those archetypes that I've explained to you. And then to understand which type could be beneficial for them. This is a kind of methodology and tools can be used widely by SMEs especially. Then the Resolve One framework, which is also initiated from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is one of the strategies levers that allow that organization can understand whether through which direction can move towards better to being circular. So it is a kind of diagnostic tools that identify which strategy is best for you in this area. Then, of course, the life cycle assessment that quantifies the environmental and economic impact of the circular versus linear option. This is what turns the business case from a concept into a number, and that number is what gets investment approved internally. So I think some of the organization, based on their budget or possibility, they apply this one. And the other one is the circular business model. So this is the tools that can be applied and can be used to understand, to evaluate your business model. This is the business model canvas, usual one, but it is adopted to circular principles. I mean, like each of these building blocks are the same as the business model canvas, but how they are adopting to be circular is different. The meaning, the value, and the concept behind that is changing. Like from the value proposition, the partners relationship, they are the same, but how you build them, it becomes more dramatic changing. So you can see some of them has deeply transformed because you need to dramatically changing your internal organization, but some of them requires moderate to lower adoption. Okay, and the next enabling tools, it's covering the digital infrastructure and supporting the network. So the infrastructure side of it's closing the data gap and the organizational gap. So this is let's say there are some for you to, in order to understand where your product it is important to understand how you can track that product. So for instance, when you sell the product and you cannot understand to each customer it is, at what time, how long it has been used, what is the status of that product. So you can, by applying some tools, you can, of course, in collaboration with your partners and your customers, you can acquire some useful information, which also allow you to understand how you can adopt the maintenance services, when you need to take back that product in order to repair it. So these are kind of facilitating tools that can support an organization in order to first provide better services to their clients, and also provide this information to their clients in order for them to understand how was the usage pattern for a specific product. For instance, in industrial scale, if you are providing kind of services, let's like you're a remanufacturer and you're remanufacturing a product, so you can provide this information to your customers in order to understand how and into which patterns they need to remanufacture or provide the maintenance to them. So there are some tools like EIT and sensor technologies that can be put it in some of the specific products. Of course, might be possible that not all of the products would be adaptable for that, but for those that can and possibly can, these let's say sensors and components can be integrated. It can give you the possibility to track the real time information about your operation. And then, of course, the digital traceability platform, which also verify the material origins, what is the components percentage, and how is the performance, the state of the health, or based on that you can decide whether it should be recycled, remanufactured, or whatever. And of course the DRP adopted for reverse logistics. So in this case, enterprises system can be rebuilt to handle the viable quality inbound flows and asset ownership in order to understand, okay, if this asset is arriving to their premises, so how they can manage it to their value chain. So these are kind of the tools that this will be, of course, managed through the digital product passport, which I think Moni will present it next session. And but not for all of the products. For some of the products, I've like battery and textile, it is obligatory, but time by time, other products are also adding to that one. And the last one, I think it is how the network you are collaborating with. So, for instance, some of you are joined to this Mantra project, which provide you the opportunity to be interacted and transfer the knowledge, be interacted with the various partners to exchange the knowledge and receive some services based on that. So this can be an initial point for some of you. And of course, there are different kind of network initiation, like the participating to the project, European project, that can allow you to acquire new knowledge and technologies and information, and of course different type of networks that can help small medium enterprises in this regard. So I just want to close with something that I think can actually be used by most of you. So it is this, let's say, the framework, the circular business model canvas, but I want to open it with 3 questions, which I think you can reflect it a bit on your type of organization. So the first question is that where is your value is currently lost? I think why this question? Because it's really asking you to do as audit your product's life cycle for exit point. So it means that, okay, the moment that where the value leaves your system and does not come back, so how you can understand where it is the value is lost. So the exit point is the important part. And I think what then happens to your product when a customer return it under warranty? So you can check, okay, what was the condition with the product return? Has it warranty, or there was some problem with that a specific product that it's returned even earlier than its warranty? So it is the most companies can get information about this type of resources that they will receive through their interaction with their customers. So it means that, okay, every one of these exit point is a money for you that is living from your system. So you need to map them because that map will tell you where the opportunity is that and where you can start in order to create circular value. Then again, exactly the second question is that what circular opportunity does that lost suggests. So here is where the archetypes from earlier that we saw become useful, because it will show you where the material lost. So you can apply like circular supply or resource recovery, and how you can just apply product life extension if you are if some returns are not coming back to you. So you can maybe think about how to extend your product life for some of your product, and so on and so forth. So this one will be also directed to the value proposition in order to know how the value can be generated and created through this loss, and you just turn this loss to the value for your customers. And the third question is that what product or life cycle data would you need to act on that opportunity? So if you want to run a take back and remanufacturing operation, maybe you need to know where your sold units are and when they are approaching at their end of life. So I don't know, do you have that information, that data? Probably not. So these are the things that you can start in order to gather information to start as a starting point to know which type of the circular business models or archetypes can help you in this way. So, but before I hand it over to Moni, there are three things that were skipping from my section. I'm sorry. So the first one is that, okay, the circular business models are not only one model. There are different archetypes, like through 6 models that you need to start from, the ones that fits your current capability, and of course the ones that most suitable with your customer relationship. So just one can be enough to start, and then you can scale it up one by one. And then the gaps are not are real, but they can be closed through the operational data and organizational. So you can decide, you can acquire technologies and information that can support you to structure and addressing them through the tools that we have just saw and seen. And then your data gap is your starting point. So this is the important one, because you need to ask the question that where is the product? What product do I need to start? So this is where you can also integrate the digital product passport or other strategies into your product in order to track how you can retrieve the value that have been lost from your product life. So by that, I would finish my presentation. I hope that it was clear. And if you have any question or any doubt, please.
Thank you very much, Parnia. For the moment, I don't see questions in the chat. I just wanted to tell the audience, if you have any questions, you can either write on the chat or raise your hand, and we can unmute your microphone and you can ask directly the questions to the speakers. If there are no questions for the moment on this part, we can move forward and hand it over to Moni. And in the meantime, everyone in the audience, feel free to reflect upon what you just heard from Parnia. And of course, you can ask questions about the first session also during the final Q&A. So Moni, over to you.
Thank you, Marie, and thank you, Parnia, for your presentation and introduction also to the topic of the digital product passport. So good afternoon to the audience and to the colleagues from Mantra. My name is Abdurrahman or Moni. I work at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Politecnico di Milano. And my research is now focused more on the digital product passport for the transition towards sustainable and smart manufacturing. So I hope this introductory presentation will give you a nice hint on the importance of the DPP as an enabler for the circular economy, and how it can work as a tool that goes beyond compliance, because of course the digital product passport is something that the European Union is mandating to specific product groups, but as Parnia correctly mentioned, it shall be also generalized to different products. So I had the title in mind for today's presentation is the DPP implications for SMEs. Of course, we will discuss the sectoral use cases in this presentation, but I wanted to give more of a flavor for what, as a small medium enterprise, what to expect from this new piece of legislation and how it can work as an enabler for your circular businesses. So allow me to start by a little legislative background, because as I mentioned, this is a piece of legislation at the end of the day. And the story started a while ago, so with the European Green Deal, which was, of course, gave birth to a bunch of instruments that are underneath these green deals that fulfill the goal of modernizing the industry in Europe, becoming more resource efficient, and of course increasing the competitiveness, and making sure that the new economy is more circular. So you can see in the slide on the left that these are some of the objectives that within the Green Deal, as the decarbonization of energy systems, transition to circular economy, preserving and restoring the ecosystems and biodiversity, and of course development of more clean public and private transport. So that was the initial point of birth of these new legislations that came afterwards. And in particular, we have here on the right some visualization of from the Green Deal. You have the new Circular Economy Action Plan, of which you have specific objectives and new legislations. And within the scope of the Circular Economy Plan, there is the Sustainable Products Initiative, which already we heard about circular textile, we heard about the constructions regulations, and then finally we achieved the ESPR, which is the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulations, in which the Digital Product Passport is the main system for information exchange. So that's the story. It's not just about the DPP, it's also now multiple pieces of legislation, such as we have the Toys Act. So toys also will have the digital product passport. You have also aspects like the right to repair and the new textiles regulation and so forth. So that is a bit of a background on how these pieces of legislations would work together in order to achieve these objectives of the Green Deal. Now, delving a bit into the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. Now, the ESPR has already entered into force in 2024. And the idea is to transform European products into more environmentally sustainable and also support the consumers in making more circular decisions and more ethical purchasing. Of course, this is connected to other pieces of legislation, as I mentioned, but the concept of a sustainable product was introduced here. And you can see on the right, I give the examples that were mentioned in the communication from the Commission about what is a sustainable product. So the idea is it can display one or more of these following characteristics. So it can be an energy-based product, and then it uses less energy to perform. So that's a sustainable product. You can extend the lifetime of a product. So one of the archetypes of the circular business models that Parnia introduced. So if it lasts longer, that is a sustainable product. And of course, combinations of these. But essentially, some new aspects have been codified, excuse me, into this legislation. So how easily a product can be repaired, how easily you can dismantle a product in order to reach the specific sub-assemblies or components of interest. And of course, connected to the ease of disassembly and ease of repair, having fewer substance of concerns and hazardous component. But whenever you cannot extend as much, we reach the recycling point, and a sustainable product can be easily recycled. So we separate these components, and then if there is no further functionalities to be restored, you go into recycling. It also affects the design because more recycled content is now being already within at least draft legislations mandated per the different products. So we've seen that in of course, in the battery regulation, which we will discuss today in the use cases, but also in the draft end-of-life vehicle and other sort of emergent legislations. So containing more recycled content, and of course, in general, having a lower carbon environmental footprint, not just at production, but over its life cycle. So that's what was mentioned in the law, and it's worth mentioning that the ESPR is a framework legislation. So it sets the scene for what is about to come. Not saying in particular which attributes a product must have or the percentage of, let's say, recycled content that all products should have. That wouldn't be the goal of this legislation, and it's not possible to do. So from here, we need to understand this new maybe concept of the information requirements being using the DPP as the package to represent it. So the new concept is information is available on the product, reachable from the product, discoverable, so you can see that you can reach this information. And of course, it displays these sustainability aspects that we mentioned, and then due diligence, traceability, and so forth. So I reported here on the right from a previous webinar of the Commission during the year of the adoption of the ESPR, how they are separating these requirements. Because at the end of the day, these are new requirements for products that, of course, some of it are mandatory, some is voluntary. We'll get to discuss that. But the essential distinction is that there is performance requirements. So you can see here kind of like the durability of the product, the reliability. These are more performance-related requirements. And there's the information requirements. And here where the DPP lies. So you can already imagine from this schema that there is a distinction between two DPP terminologies. First is the digital product passport system. So how to take from the piece of legislation that is the ESPR, the requirements, develop a system that is able to deal with these requirements, and at the same time ensure the essential pillars of it is a decentralized system, so there will not be a central European repository of all the products information in Europe. That will not happen. So still you as a manufacturer or a retailer or an importer, you are required to issue a digital product passport, but of course you don't need to develop a system for it. That would be already covered by the European Commission and the kind of standardization work being done. So I will take a bit of time describing what the system looks like, because this is the certainty is high about the DPP system. Now, regarding the DPP data, this is what I mentioned related to the delegated acts. We already have high certainty about the batteries, which come into effect February of next year. Less certainty about textile, but we have already some draft version of these kinds of studies, but not quite a delegated act. And then we have also intermediary products that came into the equation of the digital product passport. So we'll get to explore it together throughout the webinar. But that's just to introduce these terminologies, because I will use them a lot. And of course, feel free to stop me if something is not very clear terminology-wise. So let's try to define a digital product passport together. So as I mentioned, digital product passport is this container of having a twin of the product in a digital way, right? And in order to represent a product in a digital way and to make this information accessible in a machine-readable way, you need to structure your information. So this is the entry point of a digital product passport. It's a structured collection of product-related data. And its scope is predefined because there are laws that will tell you which data points you have to include. So it has a predefined scope and agreed data ownership. We'll get to discuss the different access rights and kind of information also that will be in a DPP. And the point is, it is conveyed through a unique identifier. So this is a first keyword that for each product, it must be uniquely identified. And it is accessible through electronic means through a data carrier. So second term here is the data carrier, which you can see here in the example as a QR code, but it's not just a QR code. It's a way to keep the information physically attached to the project, to the product. And then the scope of this digital product passport is information related to sustainability, circularity, and value retention by the different R strategies. Of course, the DPP is based on a decentralized approach. So as I mentioned, there will not be a central repository, but that's for the data storage, of course, and it's always uniquely linked to a product. So to summarize all of this, and this is, I believe, is the vision of the Commission and why they are doing the DPP. DPP is an information system for the circular economy. Now, that said, there are many actors in a circular economy, new actors already approaching this transition, as well as the complexity of supply chains, because at the heart of it, sustainability metrics are related to your supply chain in at least complex products. So I wanted to now dig a bit deeper into these pillars that we heard in the previous slide. So we started with first a unique and persistent ID for the product. You will see, you will see Surpass a lot, but because this is the project that worked, it's called coordination support action, which means the objective was to reach consensus on what this digital product passport system would look like, in which, of course, Politecnico di Milano was a project partner. So the idea here, if we take an example of a particular product. This product can be the mobile phone. A phone is manufactured, and of course, you have multiple components coming from different suppliers, of which the whole phone can contain a DPP, or just a part of it can contain a DPP. But in this example, we are saying that the phone is, there is a DPP for the phone. The point is we focus on making information available to downstream actors, so to circular economy actors, for the different circular strategies you can do to your end-of-life product. And in order to do that, first, the manufacturers needs to start collecting information from the different suppliers, right? So you trace your supply chain. This is, my board. It has XY components coming from ABC, and their components come from materials coming from countries XYZ and so forth. So there is already this traceability aspect in order to make sure that you are also reporting sustainability information that are auditable and make sense. On the other side, there is the transformations that happen within the manufacturing itself. So you can imagine that within the shop floor itself, you can have a meter on the machineries to understand the energy consumption, and then do a calculation to see how that affects each individual product. So that will also get into the information. Now, this is not new. The supply chain, the manufacturing, all of that exists already. Now, what has always been a problem to circular economy is the asymmetry in information. There is usually a gap between this upstream, so how the manufacturer as the supplier collects information. There is already a communication channel there. They're usually bound by service agreements. They have already a contract in place. So they do exchange information. Now, we're saying for a DPP, you have to exchange to attach these information in a structure that is, understandable to everyone, which is called semantics. So that is the extra level that they need to do. But the point is, what really the contact ends once the product reaches the market. Now, the heart of the DPP is to make the information not dissipate, to ensure the flow of information also downstream. So the use phase, you as a consumer holding a phone, you will get to access information on how the phone, on where the phone was, produced, what kind of precious materials are inside, the impact of environmental impact for the phone until it reaches the use phase. These kind of concepts you can already use to make a purchasing decision. So that's the first key use case of a consumer. Why would a consumer care about the DPP? But of course, you can use it practically to understand where to fix such a product if it fails. So repairing instruction, for example, you would have in some cases the disassembly instruction. Of course, there is a law, the right to repair because of Apple, basically. But the heart of the legislation is to make these information available to the public also. So you can see you need a system that allows the public to see non-confidential information, because I do not need to know the material composition inside, the board of the phone or the battery. That is not information that will help me as a consumer, but I need to make this information available to the privileged user. So that's the actor that the law is, the ESPR is using. It's circular economy operators. So these are, actors with legitimate interest in understanding this confidential information. So in order to have this flow and access rights, so forth, we presented these pillars. So you would have a way to uniquely persist the identification. So of course, this is the first point about the granularity of the product. And granularity is the level of analysis that we're talking about, the level of details that we are addressing. Because in my example, I said the phone, the DPP can be for the phone, but can be just for the battery of the phone, right? So you can imagine that the concept of product, if it's a consumer product, it's understandable, but not all products are for consumers, and this was not the a limitation from the legislation. So we uniquely identify the product. We select which granularity do we want this identification to be, and then we add this persistent data carrier, and in its simple form, it can be a QR code, but also a digital watermark, a barcode. These are all data carriers. So you can imagine something as the RFID is more suitable for specific applications, not for all applications. The most, let's say, convenient way to carry this information is a QR code, I would say. And then the third pillar is this digital link between this digital passport and the physical product, because the QR code will not contain the passport. It will contain the link to the passport, right? Because as you can imagine, you would need physically a very big QR code if you put all the information inside. But that's beyond the point. The point is the information is reachable from the physical product, but the data storage remains within the responsible economic operator, which is another term to say the importer, manufacturer, retailer, whatever actor is placing the product in European market. This is the responsibility lies on this actor. And in its simple form, this digital connector can be just a URI address. So literally what you do with a QR code, it points towards a link that is a URL, but you can have a more abstract way to represent it by saying just a URI, so identifier, instead of locator. Okay, so in order to have these three technologies working together, you need IT architecture to support for that. And this is the point, because for now we're just doing a digital product. In order to become a passport, it has to be something that really everyone recognizes, regardless of the product. So if my passport is green and yours is red, it doesn't matter. Everyone will seeing it will understand it's a passport. So in order to do that, when I am talking about a product, I need to use standardized vocabulary. So I have a phone. This phone is everyone buying a phone, looking at the website, can see that the camera specs, how big is the phone, the display, these kind of things, they go to it. So the point is, we compare phones because we know when they say this is the specs of the camera, we all understand what it means. And similarly, you need the same concept with the content you are putting in your passport. So standardized vocabulary, really an essential, but also standardized data exchange protocols and formats. And there are specific recommendations for that. I can point you towards it if you're interested, but essentially it's in graph format. And I have a slide giving you an example on that. And then, of course, you would need a standardized but stakeholder dependent, because as I mentioned, the system will work with different actors, from the consumer, who is just the general public, to a recycler, remanufacturer, customs authority, so you have the government as well, market surveillance authority, So you would need stakeholder-dependent access mechanisms, and here the recommendation was using the infrastructure of data spaces to do this access right. And of course, distributed storage of information and a stakeholder-dependent interaction layer. So you can imagine that a repairer, if I need to repair a camera of my phone or change the battery, I need to update my digital product passport saying that the repairer saying that I changed this battery model, I changed the battery on this following date, and I introduced a new battery coming from X batch, for example. So that's sort of privileged access that one of the circular economy as stakeholder dependent interaction would be needed. Now, with the pillars in mind, not all information is the same. So there are the mandatory information you can see represented here. These are always represented in the standardized data exchange protocols, always sector dependent. Not all information, mandatory information would be horizontal. There are some horizontal information, horizontal meaning it works within different sectors, but it's usually sector specific and focusing on sustainability and circularity information. So that's what is called the EU DPP, and its geographic boundaries are within the EU. So any products entering the EU need to have a DPP. Any materials of interest as well, such as steel, aluminum, they have to contain the DPP. And later on, we will see that expanding to many groups. Now, all in the light gray are non-mandatory. So they can be part of the DPP, but it's not obligated by the laws to have. So if I want to have, some of them are fairly technical, but if I want to add information about the ontologies used, ontologies are formalized representation of knowledge, basically. So if I want to say, this is vocabulary, standardized data exchange, and I'm pointing towards a vocabulary, but me as a company, I have my own way, my own meanings of components and functionalities and so forth. So you can add these meanings on top of the DPP, right? So that's a very, of course, practical point, but you can imagine also some companies wanting to talk more about the ESG, talk more about upstream traceability. That is all nice, but the DPP is not mandating track and trace solutions. So supply chain track and trace solutions, that's really nice to have, to ground the kind of metrics that will be eventually affecting the final product. That's perfect, but it's not mandated. Now, there is parallel work. So as I mentioned, this is EU DPP, but there is other DPPs being created elsewhere in the world. And one of the important examples, if you're interested on the supply chain aspect, so the upstream aspect, is to look at the work of the UNTP. So that's the United Nations Transparency Protocol. They have, I think, recommendation number 49 is about the protocols for what we call the UN DPP. Because as you can imagine, supply chains are global. And the EU can mandate specific information once the product enters the territory or the material enters the territory, but beyond that, there is no control. So you need a different kind of structure and organization to do it. Okay. Now I give you the reference architecture, and this is not the technical one, but this is more from actors' point of view, because I now mentioned many actors, and it's I think it's useful to start looking at the who will do what in this new ecosystem. So let's start from the center, and the center is the European Commission Central Services. And now, actually, I think last week it was finalized. There is the new DPP registry that will be hosted at the Commission. And now I think, as I was mentioning, just very recently, it was published, the draft for what this registry will contain as information. And you can, I think that date may have passed. You can say your comments or if you want to see something changed. But essentially, this is a central part of a decentralized system. But you can imagine that if I'm as a company, I'm making my information available, okay, with access rights, so consumers will get only the public information, and if needed, you will receive also confidential information that will help you reuse it, remanufacture it, recycle it, so forth. But how will I know that they actually have legitimate interest in accessing this information? And this is part of what a registry will do. So a registry will keep, of course, a log of the identifiers of the digital product passports in the European market. And this is, you can imagine, it's something very helpful. But also the economic operators. So I can say, okay, I'm Moni, I'm interested in, I work as a recycler of batteries, and I'm interested in accessing the privileged information of batteries. So I put my identifier as an operator, as an economic operator, as part of this registry, and that will be further used for, designate the correct access rights when you access the DPP. But you can imagine also not all recyclers need to know all the product information. So if I work in electronics or in batteries, I do not recycle plastics. So I wouldn't need to access the information about plastics. So there is a bit of safeguarding here that really only this privileged or confidential information will only be accessed by the actors who really would use it. And of course, there is the web portal. So what would you do if you do not have the physical product in your hand? And this is basically what answers this question, because as I want to, part of the reasons I would use a DPP as a consumer, I would like to use it in order to understand which product to buy. So as a professional buyer, I have a list of DPP IDs, and I go to the DPP web portal to see these kinds of information without the actual need to scan the product. So I started from here, but I want to very quickly introduce also the different actors that go into that, because as I mentioned, the customs is a big part of the equation. Sorry, they would be interested in first of all checking if a product has a DPP, right? Because as I mentioned, importers are also required to issue this DPP. So they would do a check other than their usual customs check. They would also do a check on the availability of these compliance aspects. Market authorities as well would very much would love to have this access to these links of what products are on the market, containing which, for example, critical materials, what are their actual useful life that they spent in the market. These are all very, very useful information for policy as well. But then you would have other actors as the authorities that issue these identifiers and keep track of changes in the company, because you can imagine that the company can change its legal status But then we go into the let's say the operators that work with the DPP, and here there is a difference between the independent operators or operators that are contracted by the actual manufacturer or supplier of the product. And I will not get into too many details here, but I just wanted to highlight maybe here this actor that for a DPP to have a product on the market with a DPP, you need to have a backup of it, and the legislation already foresees a DPP service provider that will host this backup DPP. Or as a fallback, there will be also a part in the commission dedicated for these kind of archives, which is a little bit of a different nuance between a backup and an archive. But in order to ensure that if a company goes out of business, the DPP will not disappear. Okay, I will not dig any deeper here. Just to say there are more information about these two now. We have very recently, we have these new information about these two pieces of the architecture of the DPP system that is handled by the Commission. And here I reported points about the registry and the web portal. Of course, stressing that the full data is stored with the economic operators, so the producers or the service provider, if they have a service provider, but it is accessed also through this web portal in case you do not have the physical product in hand. And on the other side, just to highlight the content that will be in the registry, as I mentioned, the DPP product identifiers and the updates to them will always be in this registry. Okay. Now we talked about the system. Let's give some hints about the data. As I mentioned, we have two upcoming products with the mandate for a digital product passport starting next year. So we have the first one are batteries, so specifically batteries above 2 kilowatt hours. So you can imagine e-vehicles like means of transport and industrial and stationary as well batteries, starting from February 2027. Followed by the textiles, so garments, shoes, and that will be in summer 2027. Now, I'm saying here likely upcoming, but we know with different certainty that they are pretty much all of them coming within the couple of years that follows. So we have the construction products, and that's related to the new construction legislation. We have 3 intermediary products also that are required to have a DPP. So we have iron, steel, aluminum. Then another priority product, furniture, including the mattresses, tires, also a priority product, detergent, paints, lubricants, and chemicals, energy-related products. So you can imagine any product that has the April system, A, B, C, D, and this pointing arrow towards the energy consumption of it, that will also eventually require a DPP as well. But the April database, as I mentioned, the one with the grading of the energy-related product is already doing a really good job. So that will be pretty later. And then we have the ICT products and other electronics, including consumer electronics. So that's as you can see, from a system perspective, the aspects that I mentioned about decentralization of data storage and access rights and standardized formats of exchange, that's one thing. And being able to handle the actual products that are very different is another thing. And as I mentioned, this is more related to the delegated act that tells us exactly how to deal with these kind of information requirements. Okay, so very quickly here you see some of the upcoming milestones. So of course, as you can see, we are still in the phase of the acts on the DPP. The next delegated act we are waiting for, textiles. Of course, then we have the first product requirements start to apply. Remember, the 2027 is the adoption of the measures and the start of the battery passport, but there is a grace period. So there is we are entering the period where really the structuring of these requirements into information availability and the readiness to do that is becoming quite crucial. Okay, you've been hearing for me and previously also Parnia, and I wanted just to pause a little bit, maybe less than 5 minutes, because I see we are running a little bit out of time. So let's take a breather until 4:30. Valeria, if you want to say something, please.
No, apologies. I just wanted to give you a big thumbs up, but I got the wrong button. Apologies.
Okay. So let's take a breather, stretch a little just for 2-3 minutes, and then 4:30 we'll continue.
Thank you, Moni. See you soon.
Okay, so I hope you returned because I cannot see cameras, so I hope you're there. But this was a very short break, I understand, but we're a little tight on time and still we can slowly continue. Okay, so I want to now discuss a little bit how these actors in the DPP ecosystem would benefit also from a digital product passport. So what you see here, this is a typical typical chain of a product being put on the market by an OEM. The OEM, of course, combines different supplier inputs, so different components coming from different suppliers into and being assembled into a product. This product goes then to the user. So this is actor-centric, as you can see. For whatever useful time it goes through, maybe meanwhile it got repaired, it got some extension of the life by upgrades and so forth, but eventually it reaches this collector or a dismantler, depending on how big is the product, which in turn can either decide that there is there's residual life to be preserved and then sell it to a remanufacturer, which is of course a business in Europe that works quite well for automotive components, for example. Or he can directly recycle after the dismantling of this complex product. Now, as I mentioned, the DPP starts here. So the DPP starts by this responsible economic operator that puts the product on the market. This upstream data, that will be this OEM in that case. Of course, we can imagine you can have a similar kind of flow, but not instead of original equipment manufacturer, it would be an importer or a retailer, as long as they are the one putting it on the market. But yeah, the burden falls on that actor to collect this upstream data that will support them in finalizing the digital product passport of the product. Now, each of these actors will do one or multiple of these different operations. So as you remember, hopefully, that I mentioned that the DPP itself, so the information inside this product passport, is stored within the let's say the databases of the company producing, in that case, the product. But these actors have the right to, at the very least, read the DPP. All of them. At the very least, read the publicly available information. But some actors would also require to issue a new DPP, such as the remanufacturer. So in the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, the ESPR, they singled out remanufacturing, and by definition, remanufacturers, as the only circular economy operator who does not update the DPP, but issues a new one, right? Because essentially, the remanufacturing as a circular strategy gives a new service life to the product, not an extension of, it's not a repair action. It's a thorough standardized procedure that gives you a warranty, same as the new product. So you issue a new DPP for that product. But you can also update the DPP. So as I mentioned, within the use cycle, you can repair it and I can update it. But also for surveillance reasons, also for reasons that are more related to tracking the raw materials in Europe, you would imagine that you can utilize this DPP for updating the events that happen to the product. So a collector will say, I collected, by just scanning it and updating the DPP for a status that it's no longer in life, it's now collected. This is already very valuable information to understand how many products are actually collected at which point and their actual service life. But you can imagine that, for the dismantler, they will not only update saying I dismantled, but they would read the dismantling operations and sequence from the DPP. And this is already one of the data points that was, other than finding the place where to repair or to dismantle, which should be part of the DPP as well. You would have these information on how to disassemble and reach the level you would require. Until we reach the recycler, and at this point, this is the point where the DPP is deactivated, so it ceases to exist. So as you can imagine, product enters a recycler, it exits as materials, so it's no longer a product. And with what I mentioned before, that we have different access groups. So the general public, the government, and to other businesses who legitimately are interested. So these operations, issue, read, update, and deactivate, this is what we are discussing right now. What is actually how to come up with the data points of interest, especially for this later access group, which is the legitimately interested persons, so recyclers, remanufacturers, in general, circular economy operators. So this is the point. How can I decide without the delegated acts until yet, and how can we help the Commission also understand the the details and the particularities of our products that will enable further circular strategies down the line. And this is the way to communicate these kind of interactions. Now, some user stories have already been defined, and of course, these are generic ones. There are specific ones for the battery, for example, and so forth. But this is an exercise that I think is very simple to do from if I understand my own product, and it gives you a bit of a hint, of course, specifically related to these other economic operators or independent operators that we want to exchange information with. So I will not go, of course, through all of them, but just to give you an overview that you create a DPP as a responsible economic operator. You also can link your DPP, or in case of modular products, so you can imagine the example I used about the phone. If the battery has a DPP, you need to link it to the phone's DPP. Of course, you get to read a DPP with different technologies and access levels. So I mentioned, of course, accessing from the data carrier, from the physical product, but also by the portal. So accessing online and accessing in bulk. So in a collection of DPPs at once. So that's the different ways you can read a passport. You can write to a DPP also in different ways. So you can update directly a backed up DPP by the responsible economic operator, but also independent actors. So circular economy operators will need to update it, like the examples I mentioned. And here we explored also different scenarios. So you can have an authorization to update the repository of the economic operator. So you can imagine it as a contracted repairer. If I work with Apple and I want to write that this phone has been repaired at my repair station, probably I have a way to do that. But if I'm not contracted by them, if I'm an independent phone repairer, now we are entering an era where you cannot tell me I cannot repair your phone, right? So there must be a way to update the DPP also without the authorization of the producer. And this is quite important because, as I stated in my introduction, that this information is limited because you have good information flow once it is assembled and reaches the market. But then almost very, very little communication, formalized communication at least, with the circular economy operators. You have laws about the producer responsibilities, consortia to collect the waste, but it's not impactful circularity measures, at least. So there must be a way not only to access this information, but to update it also, regardless of the approval of the, and the approval, I mean, quite literally, it's stored in the data centers of the company, right? Because I own the data of my products. If I'm not taking responsibility for that product, if another actor is taking responsibility, then they need to have this way to update the information about it. And that's essentially the story. And of course, there are other details about this transfer of responsibility. So I can, as I mentioned, there is already envisioned in the law an actor called a DPP service provider that they can have these backups and so forth. But also they can provide services to the company, because you need to remember that you cannot charge any money for a DPP as a company. DPP is free of charge. And the point is you can always pay a service provider for hosting the DPP, for example, or for services related to structuring data within your company, but not for making the DPP available. That will always be free of charge. And yes, of course, making available a DPP backup, that is very much related also to if a company goes out of business, and then the deactivation in the case of, for example, recycling, or a remanufacturer that is issuing a new DPP. Now, I will only go through 2 slides about these stories, because I want to highlight that the true value of the DPP is not just this mandatory circle. It's reaching a little bit, depending on where you are at as a company, to these voluntary aspects, because really these are where the use cases get really interesting. Here, sorry, here the story is about an independent operator who is authorized by the producer. He wants to add data about item level. So this is the granularity aspect. Now I'm talking about one phone, not a phone model, not in general, so that the users can access these detailed and updated product information. So it's a writing to a DPP story. And you can imagine that we always start with scanning this data carrier, because hopefully this operator has the product in front of them, and then using the DPP to read repair instructions, for example, or to log something. The point is, if I'm going towards where am I logging back these repair operations, right? So I already read how, with the kind of information I received the information, now I want to update or write back to it. I can use my own, I use my own independent data system, database for hosting these kind of data, or I log into the host's DPP system. So you can imagine this would be probably there would be an interface, an API to communicate these kind of changes. But in its most simple form, it would be as simple as log into their system and put a log of the repair. In other cases, of course, you would need to link the new updated DPP, because now you added a new event to it, to the physical, to the data link between the physical and the digital. So it's, I know it's not maybe very easy to follow, but these are quite important to get to truly understand what kind of interactions will happen with the DPP later on, and what consequences that have, and these kind of decisions. Of course, you can change your mind, but starting to think about it, I think, is a good idea. Now, this second story, it's pretty much the same, but in that one, I want to indicate, so it's again writing to a DPP, but I want to indicate that, the DPP no longer exists. So this is more of a remanufacturing or recycling kind of scenario, so that others are informed of the state of the product. Of course, it's a long story, a little bit, I cut it, but I wanted here to highlight not the part that where to find the new updated DPP. It's a system kind of decision. I'm more interested here in that junction point where me as an independent operator, I want to understand if this product has still remaining life or not. This junction, this remanufacturing is possible or recycling is required, is the layer that I'm talking about that is above just the mandatory ones. So you can, as a remanufacturer, as a circular economy operator, utilize the DPP data combined with your own inspection system and observations to decide the most appropriate reman activity and how to manage also the reman process. So there exist multiple decision points when we are talking about circular economy, where because of variability of the product condition due to its quality and quantities that come, that you want to make a decision based on a specific analysis that you have in-house. And this is where I think it's a really high value to go beyond just, or to start thinking beyond just the mandatory circular side. I will not go through this, but feel free to take a screenshot if you want, and we can discuss maybe if there's a question. But I wanted instead to give some hints on the prototypes and hopefully not take too much time to give you some space also for questions if needed. So here, this was during the time of the ESPR is published, right? So we still don't have the DPP concept, but it turned out to be it's very much related to the battery regulation. Batteries are complex products. They are modular. You have a battery pack that consists of multiple battery modules, and each module you have multiple cells. Now, you can have different chemistries within the individual cell. You can have different geometry on how these modules are connected together, some in parallel, some in series, how many cells are in a module, what is the capacity. So there are many combinations you have in a battery, and especially when the chemistry also gets into the equation. So in order to bridge this information asymmetry, that we want to make a decision about the end-of-life battery. And that decision was whether we can reutilize, there is some more remaining useful life inside the battery to be reutilized for a second life. And then if such, then would it be best to use it for an automotive application, stationary application, what kind of application? So the idea here was to have basically two sources of data. One is the nominal information, what we call the product information management. In here, you can think about it as an extensive catalog of what exists on the market. So we have, I don't know, Renault batteries have usually these chemistries and this geometry and this information. So you have a big table of what is available. And the other source is the in-use condition, which very much is related to the remaining useful life, the state of health of the batteries, and so forth. So the information flow here follows what turned out to be what will be mandatory in the laws. So you need to have dismantling information, right? So these are PDFs, and you have to remember also in the DPP that will not replace the paper documents. I mean, it should digitalize it at least, and that's really important. So you would have PDFs as well, but that doesn't mean that all the content must be directly reachable from the DPP. You can also have reports, you can have certificates, you can have, this is my ISO. So the flow here was to utilize this dismantling information along with some other inspection techniques to gather this in-use condition to make a decision, and that is this intelligent module of a decision support system that also takes input from, as you know, batteries have these battery management systems that you can take good estimates about the state of health from it. And of course, when the actual circular operations are happening, so you're taking the pack apart, so pack disassembly, you have new information or access at least to new information. So information about, you know, if I already didn't know this battery pack, then I would see once I disassemble it, the kind of, you know, the kind of, the condition of the links, for example, the condition of the wires that go between the different modules. So that's quite important as well. And the in-use conditions, so other than the information you get from the battery management system, they are not possible to know without physically opening and inspecting it. So that was without getting into too much details, that was the flow from digital twinning to decision support to utilizing AI for specific inspection points until you reach a decision. This battery has remaining useful life of X, and it is thus most suitable to be used as stationary application. Now, in the battery regulation they gave us specific thresholds that you have to prepare a battery for reman if the remaining if the state of health is above, I don't remember, it was I think 90%, something like that. So this is the idea of this prototype aspect, at least before. But now, as I promised, this is a bit of the behind the hood of, or under the hood of, what is the DPP. I mentioned graphs, and this is the semantic triples, so a way to represent your information, and that would be, of course, the sort of homework that companies need to think about in order to structure their data in a way that is truly passport-like and identifiable by anyone, right? Okay, just to say here, if you're interested about some demonstrators, you can see the batterypass.io. It is, of course, the work of the Battery Pass Consortium that works specifically on the requirements of the delegated act of the battery passport. You can see here part of the static data, at least static and dynamic data that will be included in the battery passport. Very interesting work also is being done by the follow-up project on the Battery Pass Ready. So it's the operationalizing this battery passport, and they're identifying the different use cases there. I would also point you towards, if you're curious how along the value chain, how to identify these cases for utilizing the digital product passport. So I will point you towards the report from the Battery Pass Consortium regarding the value of the battery passport. And they identified, as you can see, I do not remember the number, but I think 10 or so use cases at different points in the value chain of creating a battery. So this is already available. What will be available this month, I think next week or something, is a test environment to start basically testing if you have a DPP that is ready or not. So that would be available on the Battery Pass Ready website. On textiles, I will not spend too much time because I see I'm almost done with my time. But essentially, the open questions, because textiles is still, we do not have the delegated act. So as I mentioned, less certainty about the kind of information that will be inside. But this is the high-level discussion that is happening. How can we represent, for example, this a shirt, right? Do we represent it at a model? So we say, okay, this is a white shirt of of Zara. Or we go into a batch level. So a batch is saying, and in textile they use the stock keeping unit SKUs. That's their batch, and essentially saying the white shirts coming from batch X of manufacturing facility Y, and you provide a DPP for it, or then going for an item level DPP, which says that every shirt has a passport, and to each of these approaches, of course, pros and cons. Cons, as you can imagine, with more granularity, you increase the cost to publish that. But yes, that's the high-level discussion. I would just point you toward maybe the demonstrator of the Passat project. I think the QR code is working also. It points to Fraunhofer's mock-up for a textile DPP. There are also interesting and very timely kind of drafts that the Commission is open for comments. If one of the, of course, participants is focused on that sector, you can give your opinion. So one of the published documents is this draft study on the DPP content for textile apparel products. It is a long document, not an easy read. But just to say that at least now we have two things that came out. This picture is from the content for the textile, but it's taken from actually the methodology on how to identify the data for products under the ESPR. So basically how to anticipate these delegated acts, because we still do not have, certainty for these ones, at least starting right away. And I would stop here. Hopefully you still have some focus to ask some questions or to interact for some minutes, but I leave it to of course, the hosts to manage the time, because maybe I ran a little bit out of time there.
Thank you very much, Moni. No, absolutely. Of course, if there are any questions, we can stay a few more minutes. I was monitoring the chat. I do not see any questions at the moment, just about sharing the slides, and this webinar is being recorded as well, so the participants will also receive the recording of the session, so you can go back through it. We appreciate that there is a lot of information to process within the content that you have heard today. So yes, I would check if anyone wants to ask any questions just now. Another point that I wanted to make is that my colleague Angelica has shared in the chat a link to a very short survey. Really will take you only 2 minutes to complete it, but we would really appreciate everyone's feedback on the session. So it's very important for us to understand what you thought about this in order to potentially improve in the following round, should we decide to repeat this format for the next open call of Mantra or for another set of for a different audience. So yes, thank you very much. If you could look into the survey, we would really appreciate it. Otherwise, if there are no other questions from the audience, I would really just to extend again a very, very big thank you to both Parnia and Moni for participating to this webinar, for the effort into preparing the material that you shared with us. I am sure that this was extremely insightful for all the participants today. And so thank you very much for putting your expertise to the service of today's audience. Anyone else that wants to share anything, ask anything, comment, feedback?
No, thank you for this session. Also from the internal side was very insightful, so much appreciated.
Thank you so much for organizing this. So if there is any question afterwards, so you can reach out, of course.
Fantastic. In that case, with only 2 minutes of delay, I would propose that we can close the session. Thank you very much also to everyone who participated.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.